My name is Ken Ross. I am the SPSP webinar coordinator, and thank you for attending today's program. I want to do a short introduction, and then I'll turn it over to our speakers. Just want to let you know about upcoming programs. So I continue to add new ones. So if you probably haven't seen this before. So next week, we're doing a program on foreign language issues and how to do translations. In March, we're going to take a break for the ICFSO meeting, and then in March we'll have some more representatives from retailers talking about how they like to deal with manufacturers and safety issues. In April, I have a CPSC trial attorney who's going to talk about reporting issues and how to develop a corrective action plan, which happy to have somebody from the CPSC be able to tell us about these things and answer your questions. And then in May, I've got Chris Harvey and a lawyer from the Cooley firm talking about how to manage cross-border recalls. So that's the dates I have set so far, and I'll be continuing to add new programs through the rest of the year. We appreciate you attending these, or whichever ones you're interested in doing. And by the way, I'm doing three programs each week, and the reason is because today's program, as you'll hear, this new computer program is being announced, and so it was timely to have you guys learn about what was going on, as it is very timely for today. I'm not going to introduce the speakers. If Alan wants to go further on that, that's fine, and they're all here today, and we thank them all for participating in today's program. And my last slide, and then I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Alan. Speaks for itself. You go to the SPSP website, click on the webinar archive. There'll be an access to any of the materials shown today, a video of the webinar, and all this is available to anyone. And we'll have other material concerning what they're going to talk about today on this link. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to Alan Abrams, who will take it from there.
Thank you so much, Ken. We really appreciate the Society of Product Safety Professionals inviting us to talk about our software today. And it's such a joy for me to have three of our past doctoral graduates from the Business Information Technology program at Virginia Tech on the webinar with me. Each has now migrated to a tenure track position at another university. So David Goldberg is at San Diego State University. He's now an associate professor there. Dr. Nahel Zaman is at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, on the tenure track there. And Dr. Rich Gruss is an associate professor of management now at Radford University. So it's just wonderful to have the graduates from our Business Information Technology PhD program at Virginia Tech continuing with product safety research and practice from coast to coast and from the southern border, and one day we'll have someone in the northern border also. So it's just terrific to have the team with me. So I wanted to kick off by just introducing you to the VT RAPTOR tool. VT RAPTOR stands for Virginia Tech Risk Assessment Process Tool for online reviews. It's not just useful for online reviews, it's useful for different modalities of customer feedback also. So you might have emails, you might have discussion forum posts, you might have call transcripts, you might have video transcripts from product reviews on the web. So any text-based content that you can process, there's a good chance that VT RAPTOR can help you more efficiently look through that text content and find safety concerns in that content. I'll give you an example of an assessment that I did yesterday. I had a mom who reached out and wanted some more information on safety concerns that other consumers had expressed with a particular toy category. And what we did within a single evening is go through 10 gigabytes of online reviews for toys, find the reviews that were relevant to that particular product category. We identified about 30,000, I think it might have been 35,000 relevant reviews by consumers for that product category. That filtering of the data, by the way, was done outside of VT Raptor. It was done with some support from Python and ChatGPT, and then imported into Excel with Excel Power Query. And then that small subset of data just for that product category we analyzed with VT Raptor. The analysis for those 35,000 reviews took about 21 minutes or so. And VT Raptor spat out a list of a couple of hundred high concern reviews that I was then able to share back the same evening with the mom, and she was able to rapidly take a look through those and go, wow, these are really interesting to see parents expressing concerns about this product category. So it's just terrific to be able to go from 10 gigs of data to a couple of significant individual interactions with customers that are really of most concern within a short period of time. Now, the Virginia Tech Raptor tool is actually broken up into multiple workbooks, so it's not just a single workbook. The core part of the functionality is indeed to score your online reviews to determine which are most likely to mention safety concerns so that you can rank them and filter out the ones that are unlikely to mention safety concerns and just focus on the high scoring reviews. So that's definitely the core of the functionality. But we also provide supportive software to allow you to determine whether you are collecting the right data, whether the labelers that you're using are accurate, both the human labelers and the machine labelers, and to determine whether new words and phrases that you plan to use for your risk assessment efforts are actually viable in terms of producing a low number of false positives and hopefully a low number of false negatives also. So we'll talk about each of those different pieces of the VT Raptors tool, starting with part A, which is helping you to assess whether you're actually gathering the right data in the first place, to part B, which David will talk about, looking at how you score your content and find the top scoring items that are most likely to contain safety concern mentions. Rich will then talk about how we determine whether our labeling is reliable, both by our machines and by our humans. And Noel will talk about how do we know whether a new smoke word or phrase is going to be a good one by assessing it against historic data that we can assess against. So I'm going to kick off with part A. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what part A looks at. And again, part A is really about determining whether you are collecting the right type of data in the first place and trying to assess how good your collection efforts are, set targets for yourself in terms of how much more data you want to collect, where you want to collect data from. You'll notice, by the way, that every workbook in VT Raptor, all 5 workbooks from parts A through B through C through D and E, they all look the same. They have a similar cover sheet, but you know where you are because it says A, B, C, or D at the top. We typically find, maybe different people at the organization will work with different workbooks. So, maybe your manager of compliance will work predominantly with VT Raptor Part A, whereas your actual investigators might work more frequently with VT Raptor Part B. So these are really organized to make the responsibilities, separate and clear, so that different folks in your team can look at different aspects of the risk assessment process, or folks can switch to the relevant aspect at the point in time that they want to work on that particular aspect of process improvement. So as I said, the first part that I'll talk about, part A, is really about understanding whether you're collecting the right data and in the right volumes. If you're familiar with the notion of big data and analyzing big data, you'll know that a lot of the pundits in the big data world say we want to look for the V's of big data. We want volume, we want veracity, we want value. And so VT Raptor is actually built around those concepts, and you'll see on the collection sheet, which I'm sharing over here, that we mention these concepts of volume, veracity, value throughout this assessment process to determine, are you gathering enough data? Are you gathering the right types of data? Are you gathering correct data? Is the data that you're gathering valuable, etc.? So we try to help you assess each of these V's of big data: volume, veracity, velocity, etc. Now, this assessment that you're doing is really to assess how good you are at collecting data from your customer feedback. And there's a variety of aspects we look at. And what VT-Raptor hopes to do here is just to give you guidance on some things that you should be considering as you collect data to try and scour for safety concerns. First of all, you probably have a lot of products in circulation. So it's probably a good idea to determine out of the products that are in circulation, how many of those products do you actually currently have data for? So you might want to know, we only have data for 50 products at the moment, but we have 1,000 products in our portfolio. So we can set some targets for how many of those products we actually want to gather data for. We also might want to make some estimates about how much data we think is out there and how much data we think we can reasonably collect into our central repository for analysis. Really, VT-Raptor is reliant upon the data existing in a central repository. You might have data in Slack, you might have data in customer reviews on Google Shopping, you might have data in discussion forums that enthusiasts that use your product have established for themselves online. There's tons of places where you might have data sources. VT-Raptor unfortunately doesn't help you collect that data, but it helps you track whether you are looking at the right sources and gathering enough information from those sources. And then once you have all that data collected into your central repository, then you can feed it into part B of our tool and actually do the analysis. So we help you, check sheet for yourself. Am I collecting data from my call transcripts, emails? Do I get data from my in-store returns and my mail-in returns? Have I collected my inbound web form submissions? Do I have transcripts of my live chat sessions? Am I getting social media feeds that feed into my central repository? And so forth. So the collection sheet in VT-Raptor Part A helps you establish what we call your customer feedback maturity. And that is how good is your organization at actually knowing where your data is and actually collecting that data centrally into a central repository for later analysis. No organization is perfect. We really want this sheet to be a sheet that gives you the opportunity to do continuous improvement, where you can establish how good you are now and where you want to be in future and track your progress towards those goals. You won't ever be able to gather all the data that's out there, but if you can move to gathering 20% of the data to gathering 40% of the data, that's progress forward, and hopefully you can use VT-Raptor Part A to scorecard your customer feedback maturity and figure out how much progress you're making from week to week or month to month in terms of your collection efforts. We also have a sheet which lets you establish how good you are at analysis. So are you able to identify different types of hazards that might exist in your data? Can you distinguish, say, mechanical hazards from thermal hazards from electrical hazards? Are you looking for simple word matches or phrase matches, or are you looking for more powerful patterns in your data? Are you doing any special searching for vulnerable populations like young children or older adults? How often are you scoring your data? Are you doing it every day, every week, every month? How accurate is your scoring, etc.? So this really lets you scorecard how good your analysis efforts are. There's nothing special about this spreadsheet. It doesn't have any, fancy formulae in it. It's really allowing you to think of the questions that are important to customer feedback collection and customer feedback analysis, establish how well your organization performs on those aspects, and set some targets for your organization to try and do better on those aspects. So once you have your data collected into a central repository, which you'll obviously need help from your information systems and data science team at your organization to get all that data pushed into your central repository for analysis. Then you can go about using part B of VT-Raptor, which will allow you to score your content and determine which customer feedback is most likely to contain reports of safety concerns and what types of safety concerns you're seeing. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Goldberg to talk a bit more about what that looks like.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you everybody for coming today. Here in this next portion of our presentation, I'll talk about VT Raptor Part B, which is about scoring your consumer feedback and understanding kind of the analytics of what your consumers are saying and how that relates to the safety of the products. As Alan mentioned at the beginning, each part of VT Raptor, although we have a few different Excel workbooks, the cover sheet looks very similar. So all of them have this sort of same graphic on them with the VT Raptor imagery. This one is part B, score your consumer feedback. And as Alan mentioned, different parts of your organization might value different parts of VT Raptor. This is the more data analytics portion, which is aimed at looking at that consumer feedback and trying to parse out from maybe a vast volume of data, what are the key insights from it and which pieces of data are the most important. Core to that, and the next sheet here are what we call smoke terms. So smoke terms are particular words and phrases that we look for in consumer feedback that indicate that a consumer is likely to be referring to a hazard. These smoke terms are validated based on past research that this team has done over a period of years. And we've got a large volume of published works that kind of go to establishing what the smoke terms are in different product categories and why. Some of these smoke terms are quite general, words like dangerous, unsafe, and hazard that you see at the top of my screen, whereas others are more specific to certain types of hazards. For instance, a choking hazard is more specific, and you would see words like choke, choking, small parts, or throat if you're looking for that kind of hazard specifically. We also consider the fact that each of these different types of hazards might not come out the same in terms of the risk they pose to a consumer. So a choking hazard is a relatively severe type of hazard in the scheme of things. So we have a higher weight on that particular category. And if we see these words and phrases as evidence of choking hazards, we're more likely to flag that feedback and say that it represents a substantial problem. This initial set of smoke terms is validated, as I mentioned, based on our past research, but we also have the capability in VT Raptor for you to supply your own smoke terms to supplement this if you want to experiment with them and see if you have something unique to your company or organizational circumstance that might be valuable to look at. So as some examples down here further in the sheet, we've got a couple of word lists from company, we've called this, where we've supplied a couple of example words that you might be interested in. You could use this or not use it. You can supplement it with additional words and phrases if you're interested in doing that sort of ad hoc analysis and seeing where those words and phrases figure into the picture. On the next sheet, we have a little bit more of these smoke term weights. So not only do we consider the weights in terms of the type of hazard that's being posed, but also based on our past work, we know that even within the same sort of hazard, not every word or phrase is equal in how indicative it is of there actually being a hazard with the product. So if we look here at the very top, the word dangerous, we have a weight on it of 25,000. That's a relatively high weight in the scheme of what's on this sheet. But we have different weights for these different words and phrases, relatively speaking, to represent how likely they are to indicate a hazard in that particular product. You can, again, supply your own words and phrases if you're interested in doing so, and you can even manipulate these weights if you'd like to. There's some words and phrases in here that we've supplied a weight of 1 so that they don't have a substantial effect on our actual calculation, but we're just interested in sort of tracking that word and seeing how often it comes up or where it comes up in these actual reviews. VT Raptor allows you to paste in your reviews or whatever kind of textual data you have this automated analysis run to shortlist the most important or most concerning reviews based on these safety dimensions. In this sheet, we've got some example data where there's a couple different products and we've got 19 total reviews, but you can put in significantly larger quantities of data if you have it. And as Alan mentioned, you're not limited to just online reviews. You could equally put in forum posts, warranty claims, social media posts, or other text data that you're interested in analyzing using these methodologies. So there we just have the raw text on the left in a sort of purple background color. But what this sheet will also do for you is mark where we see any evidence of smoke terms within these bits of text. So for instance, if I look at that very first bit of text here, this toy has sharp edges. It's indicating to me using these little carrots that the word sharp is one of our recognized smoke terms within that text, to sort of draw your eye to where the problem is in that particular bit of text. It also even has the ability to just isolate out the particular part of the review or text that's mentioning smoke terms at all. So this one just saying sharp edges make it very dangerous. Just drawing your eye to the most substantive part of the review so that you can get an idea what the problem is with that particular product. We have a number of other sheets on here that are largely computational that'll allow you to kind of see the inner workings of VT Raptor. But if we scroll further to the right, it'll give you the capability of filtering down those reviews to those that are most important. So imagine that you have quite a lot of reviews that you're analyzing. You might have a couple hundred, a couple thousand even that you're analyzing. And it's very overwhelming to try to read through all of those manually yourself and figure out what are the key insights. VT Raptor will essentially shortlist for you based on those smoke terms, those words and phrases, how often they appear and what their weights are, which of these reviews are the most significant in a safety setting. So the highest ones will show up on the sheet and allows you to filter out those that don't have anything to do with safety or they don't indicate a substantive safety problem. You can mess with the weights and the settings of this sheet. So if you want to see slightly more or fewer reviews and change what that threshold is, it gives you the flexibility to change those settings and to create an ad hoc analysis that's customized to your organization. What VT Raptor will also allow you to do is to unify this product review data with data about the product more generally, and to do a detailed risk assessment of the product to understand how those reviews or how that text data figures into your overall risk assessment of that product. So again, just for example purposes here, we have a relatively small number of products to keep it simple. Here we've got 4 products, Toy 1, Toy 2, Furniture 1, and Furniture 2. Probably your products will have more detailed names, but just for example purposes. And we've supplemented this with additional information about what that product's risk profile is. So how many units are in circulation? Are they used by any particular vulnerable groups? And we use that to determine what is the exposure level that the product poses. A product that's in circulation to quite a wide audience, if there is a safety hazard, would affect a large number of people. And if there's a particularly vulnerable group that uses it, such as children or the elderly, then that might also raise the risk profile of the product. So we use this to kind of unify background data about the product with additional data we're finding in those online reviews. Here is another instance where we allow you to change some of the settings of VT Raptor. So it will allow you to take a look at the settings for product frequency, for units in circulation, and the weights that you're putting on those relative categories. If you want to change the weights and increase or decrease a certain category, you're always able to sort of re-weight it ad hoc to your organizational preferences. As a sort of visualization, this risk assessment plot will show you where each product ranks in terms of its likelihood of risk and severity of risk. So severity would mean that given that somebody experiences the hazard is very likely to cause a severe bodily harm based on the smoke terms that we're finding in the reviews. And likelihood meaning that it's affecting a large number of people, potentially a product that's in great circulation. The closer a product is to the top right, where you get this deep red color, the riskier our algorithm is determining that it is. And the closer it is to the bottom left, this lighter cream color, the less risky that it is. So in this instance, we would say Toy 1 looks like it's particularly risky relative to these other products. But as you populate this with your organizational data, you can find kind of what is the most important products to focus on from a risk assessment perspective. If you just have maybe 3 or 4 products like we have here, this risk assessment plot is pretty easy to process. If you have a lot of products that you're dealing with, maybe 100 products, it gets a little bit busier on that plot. So we also present the same data in a table format where you can go through and look at the products one by one as just a different format of viewing that same sort of data. Furthermore, based on our types of safety hazards that we discussed earlier, we'll also be able to graph each product and see where it ranks relative to the others on these different types of safety hazards and different types of harm. So for instance, we're interested in choking hazard. We can look at where these different products rank relative to each other in terms of choking, where they rank relative to each other in terms of cutting, stabbing, or hitting hazards, and get this interactive chart that'll show you where these different products are relative to one another. This chart is totally customizable. You can change how many products and which products are going on the chart to make sure it's the most valuable for what you're trying to get out of the data. And finally, supposing that you've gone through this chart and you've identified, okay, toy number one maybe is a particular concern for me because it looks like it has a significant hazard profile. Now we want to drill down to specifically toy one and look at those reviews and see what aspect of the product needs changing or modification to address those concerns. So the final part of part B of VT Raptor will actually allow you to do that drill down. It'll show you a table of each of your products and what their relative scores are along all of these safety dimensions. And if you double click on any one of these products within this list, it'll drill down and open another sheet for you that shows you those particular reviews for that given product. And here it'll give me options to select which fields I want to show. Or if I'm interested in focusing on just one field in particular, like the choking field, I can double click on that just to focus on choking in particular. So I can see for toy one that there were 7 product review narratives that discussed these safety hazards that we need to be concerned with. And I can look at just the snippets of those particular reviews, really narrowing down my analysis. So out of maybe hundreds of reviews or even 1,000 reviews for this given product, if I can narrow it down to just 7, it's substantially more digestible to look at those reviews and figure out what's the big picture idea, how are people potentially being harmed by this product, and to remediate for next steps, where can we go moving forward? So for next part of Raptor for part C, I'll pass over to Dr. Gruss and let him take over the screen.
Okay, thanks, David. Boy, I really got to watch out for toy one if I ever see that for sale. So part C of VT Raptor is about the human validation of what the computer is doing. So on this sheet here, you can indicate that your computer algorithm has identified this particular safety hazard in this particular customer narrative that you pasted here. But what you want to do is to have some confidence in the accuracy of these labels. And so what that comes down to ultimately is a comparison with some sort of ground truth. And this ground truth has to be based on human observation. And what we've discovered over the past 10 years or so is that this is easier said than done. And it's especially easier said than done at scale. So we've developed this kind of process where we identify a core of high reliable labelers where we go through the text and then indicate whether there's a safety concern in that text. And we iterate sort of like a Delphi method where we kind of the authority labelers agree on whether something is or isn't. And so we develop this kind of core gold standard of labels. And this is actually the method that we use to generate the smoke terms, because it started off with human labelers who said this contains a problem. And then we looked at words that were significantly more likely to be in the safety concern narratives than in the non-safety concern ones. But then at that point, it has to be extended to a larger set of coders. And so there's a great deal of difficulty that comes along with that. There's, when you release several of these narratives to coders, you have to be sure, are they accurate? So you want to kind of sprinkle the narratives that they are labeling with ones that the authoritative taggers have labeled to make sure that they are doing it correctly. And then, okay, so what percentage do they have to be correct? And then in addition to this, down the road, you have multiple taggers who maybe don't agree with each other. How do you determine, how do you resolve those particular conflicts? So this whole process of getting high quality gold standard tags that will be a reliable ground truth for any kind of human class, any kind of machine classifier. This is what this part of VT Raptor is all about, this part C. So this lets you, first of all, if you're just evaluating the machine against the human ground truth, then you can look at the percentage of false positives, false negatives, true positives, true negatives, and to create something like this where you can look at the performance of the classifier with respect to the human ground truth. But the process of generating the human ground truth, we have a number of tools in here that let you identify, first of all, who your so identifying who your authoritative taggers are that you're going to compare. Where is it? Well, okay, let me back up a little bit. So this tool lets you, when you paste in your labeled narratives, it lets you track whether your assigned labelers are keeping up to schedule, how many they are producing, what percentage of accuracy are they achieving, and various other kind of metrics to ensure quality. So in this case, this sheet lets you designate who is the authoritative labeler that you are going to compare all of the multiple labelers against, and this will track how much how many of each of the labelers are, how many labels each of the labelers have produced, and then the different kinds of unique products that they have labels for. Okay, and this also keeps track of that. Okay, where is this part? Okay, so in this sheet, this actually lets you do some analysis of labelers in terms of the quality of what they're producing. So each of these columns over here are your different labelers, and this will tell you the unique narratives that they have labeled, the ones that they haven't yet labeled, the total positives that the total number of narratives that they've designated as positives, total negatives, and the percentage of positives. So it's useful to compare this to like the expected number of positives, because if somebody is labeling something as a positive that has a safety concern, they're doing a little bit too much, they're either not paying attention or they don't quite have an understanding. And if, so likewise with the negatives and the expected negatives. So there's a way of actually generating, statistical significance. Is there a statistically significant difference in the expected positives and the actual observed positives? And then you can compare how much they agree with the authority. And this gives you some idea of the quality of the labels that the person is producing. And in some cases, you get numbers that are just way off. And so it's probably not a trustworthy source. And so you can just discard all of those. In other cases, it's just a question of iterating and maybe clarifying definitions. But this, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of time here. So basically that's what this tool is about over here. This is just making sure that you get that high quality human labeling that you can then use to assess the accuracy of any kind of computational model down the road. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Noel for part D.
Hello, everyone. Let me first get to share the screen. There you go. So this is the very last part that the VT Raptor helps you to evaluate the very new smoke terms. If you want to add on to this pink highlighted cell number 7, that is, But other than that, you have all those terms that already David showed you, those unique key terms that are present in the safety concern reports, which is here in the gold standard sentences. The gold standard sentences is just you rely on this number of sentences where you can assess those new smoke terms if you want to add on each one of those cells, especially if you want to add on from this big highlighted cell. It's just allowing you to see whether any new term that you add might match many safety concern sentences that are on this spreadsheet, the gold standard sentences, versus or opposed to mistakenly you match many non-concern safety concerns. So if time let me add one word. If you imagine like so we can compare. I can show you the comparison between the existing terms up here versus any new term that you can add on to this cell. So for example, if you say awesome. And let us compare awesome term versus the dangerous term here. So you see a total number of true plus false positives. And these are different columns up here where you can do the assessment to see whether this term that you added, it's matching up with many safety concerns existing in that gold standard sentence spreadsheet versus no safety concerns. So there's a number of true positives, meaning true that are truly saying that are safety concern mentions in those sentences versus no safety concerns, which are falsely related up there. So the column C is telling us true positives matching in that gold standard sentence. So only 2 sentences that are showing the awesome word versus in the false positive area, there are only 5. So you can see the ratio again. So there's a different ways you can assess that awesome versus the dangerous, right? You can see that. Whereas the dangerous is like 79 in total, and out of those 79, you have 76 of those safety concerns mentioning dangerous term up there versus only 3 with the no safety concerns. You can see that. And then comes in column E, the ratio of false positives versus the true positives, which is very low if you see the dangerous word showing versus you can see the awesome, right, up here. And then comes the precision, and it's another way of letting you know that, for example, for the dangerous term, like 96% of the time, this computer algorithm is helping you to predict correctly the safety concern reports with this dangerous term showing up there. So versus only 28% time of the time that awesome is showing up there. It's the model is accurately predicting that safety concern that is showing the awesome term up there. Another way that would help you to see whether that model or the computer algorithm that is using that new smoke term scoring technique is showing up there. It's like the 5 more sentences of like safety concerns showing the dangerous term, which is like lift greater than 1, which should be making us sure that the model is performing better than any random selection. Rich, Dr. Gross showed us that's like in a glance that the lift chart where you can see that baseline where it's showing up that the random selection and the lift showing up there, whether the model is performing better if there's like greater than 1. For sure, you can see the dangerous term is showing 5 more safety concern related sentences showing in the dangerous term than the non-safety concerns. So where you can see that for awesome, it's very low, right? It's not good. That model is not doing that good job rather than a random selecting of those safety concerns versus no safety concerns. So these are different ways of showing you here of assessing that model, whether that, for example, the dangerous term is mentioned matching up with that safety concern sentences versus no safety concerns. And this is kind of a statistical significance test you're doing, a very simple one, like with the p-value, whether that's showing you that whether this dangerous term here again is much more statistically effective in detecting the safety concerns by using that dangerous term versus no safety concerns. And you can see when you added that awesome term, there is not so much true positives mentioned in that gold standards. That's why I couldn't compute that p-value for you. For example, if you use, let's say, daughter, right? You can see that in contrary to that awesome, daughter is showing up more rather than that awesome term, right? In safety concern related sentences where daughter is matching up with those types of true positive sentences. But still, compared to the dangerous term, you can see that the dangerous term and the lift is not, it's giving five more of those sentences up there for a safety concern that's matching up with the dangerous versus only one or close to two of those showing for the daughter, right? You can see the precision also. So you can get an overall idea of what's going on there with the validity or the assessment of those terms that you're inputting here for testing your model. So that way you can see that the validity up here, okay? So that's in a nutshell. I can give it out to you, but if you have any more questions in detail to play around with this worksheet, feel free to shoot me any email or any quest up there. Okay,
Thank you so much, Dr.
Mhm.
Raman. So there is one further workbook in VT Raptor, and that's really just allows you to keep track of your shortlisted concerns and manually annotate whether you've assigned them to an internal engineer and whether you've escalated them to the CPSC. We do also have a quick guide for VT Raptor, which is a PDF document that steps you through each of the major elements of functionality and shows you how to operate the spreadsheet. We've only had 40 minutes to present today, so as you can see, there's a lot of complexity in terms of certain analyses that your organization may want to run. So if you want to assess the reliability of your taggers, obviously that's more than a 5-minute tutorial process to figure out how to get that done. And I apologize to Rich for trying to squeeze the most complex thing into the shortest amount of time. So we do offer additional training on the tool, full day workshops that will take you through the individual aspects of the tool that are most relevant to your organization, and we can customize those to your purposes. So please regard this only as sort of an overview of what VT Raptor does. Certainly you'll be able to proficiently use VT Raptor Part B right out the box. It's been built quite generically to allow you to analyze generic product categories quite rapidly. But if you really want to tune VT Raptor to your organization and to your specific product categories, then there is some customization effort required, and we do recommend that you work with us to help with that customization. And on that note, we did get some questions in the chat window, for instance.
Well, and before you go, I have a couple of questions. So I'll start off if that's okay.
Sure. Ken, go ahead.
As the moderator, I get that prerogative, I guess. But we will get to the questions. I just have a few questions myself. But Alan will post whatever they can easily post on the website. I'll post an article that I wrote on customer service and the problems with customer service. And this is a wonderful program, but the concept is, in layman's terms, garbage in and garbage out. So this isn't going to help you figure out what information to ask the customer. When a consumer calls customer service, sends an email, it's not going to help you. It's going to help you identify that information once it comes in. But in my experience, customer service many times, unless they're trained, doesn't ask the right questions to get the right information. So we don't really know what happened. All we know is something happened, but we don't know exactly what or why it happened or how injured they were, if they were injured. And secondly, it doesn't help you identify, if as the program works, the overstatements or the lies by the consumer who just wants to make it sound like a huge problem when it really isn't. And customer service never pushes back on it because they don't want to make the customer mad. So you got to be careful when you're doing this stuff, because you've really got to prepare beforehand and train and create scripts and know when to escalate And if I'm correct, Alan, this program doesn't do any of that. This just evaluates the information once you get it. So if you've got bad information, overstated, understated information, it's going to mess up the whole program. Second concern I have as a lawyer is that I can see both the CPSC and plaintiffs' lawyers criticizing a company for not using something like this or this kind of a program. So it makes it harder for us to say is, oh, we have so many contacts, we do our best to, if they say they're injured, then we follow up with it. But if they don't, then we don't do anything about it. And their company can have miss the so-called near misses. They didn't get hurt, but they almost got hurt. And it identifies a safety issue, but it's not going to get into the system because your system because nobody got hurt. So how you set that up. So I can see allegations in a product liability case of negligence for not doing a better job of training customer service people and getting accurate information and analyzing the information using VT Raptor. So VT Raptor is an important part kind of in the middle of it, but you got to do the stuff beforehand. That's really important. And then the problem always with risk assessment is it doesn't tell you what to do about it. And I'm sure VT Raptor doesn't do that either. So, okay, so I got all this information. You guys have analyzed it. It's wonderful. So now what do? You got to make a decision of, are you going to recall the product? Are you going to retrofit? Are you going to report to the CPSC, redesign the product, whatever you're going to do. So it doesn't help you figure that one out. So it's the middle part of it, but a very important middle part. Anyway, 2 questions. Could you ever enter and gather competitor data from similar products and competitive products? And wouldn't that be important to consider that as you're doing this? Because, I'd like to learn from my competitors' mistakes and the problems they're having. A lot of this information is readily available either on an Amazon review or the competitor's website, or the NICE database from CPSC. So can that be built into the system? I'll ask anybody who wants to answer that question. Can that be put into the system too?
So the answer, Ken, absolutely yes. And we'd certainly, if you are launching a new product into a new category and you want to determine how similar products have been assessed by customers and do a rapid risk assessment, I think VT Raptor would be absolutely appropriate for that type of task. It's just a matter of acquiring that data from whatever source, whether it's Google Shopping or Amazon or other data sources, feeding it through and seeing how your competitors' products are performing in the risk assessment, so you know what risks you need to be aware of.
Okay, and then my last question, then we'll get to the questions here, is that, and we did a risk assessment program last week, and we differentiated between pre-sale risk assessment and post-sale risk assessment. This is mostly post-sale risk assessment. However, if you are considering whether you want to sell a product, whether you want to design, build, and sell a particular product, and my clients want to do this, they'd like to know what problems other manufacturers are having. So could we use VT Raptor and get the competitive data and use that in effect to do a pre-sale risk assessment so we can decide whether we actually want to make and sell this product?
I think so, yes. So, as I said, VT Raptor doesn't gather the data for you, but if you have the data from competitors' feedback that's publicly available online, absolutely, VT Raptor will give you a picture of what that looks like. I think you should always regard VT Raptor as a first filter for large volumes of data and seeing what's going on in that huge volume of data. I'll give you an example. Last week, we did an analysis for a university in Australia where we had a data set of close to 1 million reviews, and we wanted to get a rapid picture of what types of safety concerns were being expressed. What we did there is we took a random sample of 50,000 reviews from that 1 million review data set. We ran it through VT Raptor. It took 30 minutes for VT Raptor to analyze, and VT Raptor popped up with the 200 most significant items that it thought we should be looking at. Look, there were a lot of false positives in those 200 items, but amongst those 200 items, there was a high density of really concerning items that we were able to escalate for further consideration. Sure, it took me probably 3 hours to look through those 200 items, but can you imagine how long it would have taken me to look through 1 million items if it took me 3 hours to, carefully read through 200 items. So we regard, VT Raptor as a tool that helps you, get to the core of the risks as rapidly as possible from large volumes of text data. And all the charts that David showed, by the way, that beautiful risk assessment matrix and the risk radar, those are dynamically generated from your text content. So the text content that you fed in that came from your customers is getting dynamically plotted in those charts for you. And those charts are a rendering of a sort of summary of what Raptor is seeing in your data.
So if you're using VT Raptor to analyze the post-sale data in particular, and then make a decision about what you're going to do, just understand that the plaintiff's attorneys, maybe the CPSC, will come in and ask you why you made that decision. Why did you not ask the right questions? Why did you ignore certain data? Why did you not report to the CPSC or recall the product? So it gives you more information, which is helpful, but you now can't say you don't know. So there are some risks, and how you use this and how you identify what you're going to do has to be very clearly documented. All right, I'm going to stop. We've got questions. Alan, can you moderate that and take it?
Sure. So I'll go ahead. I'm going to start off with
answer.
Audrey's question, which was for smoke terms, are we able to apply terms by product category? So the answer is the default smoke terms that ship with VT Raptor are generic smoke terms that apply holistically across general product categories. We do have research papers with specific smoke terms that we found that are product category specific, so that apply to toys or that apply to seasonal products that are sold in homeware stores. Or smoke terms that apply to food, etc. So if you are looking at one of those specific categories, we recommend that you, instead of using the generic smoke terms, just pull out the smoke terms that are relevant to that product category from our prior work. What if we haven't done prior work on that? Well, the good news is that David, at the end of his doctoral dissertation, released an open source tool on the web called Fumeus.app. That's Fumeus.app. And that actually lets you train product category specific smoke term lists and determine which smoke terms are most pertinent to the product category that you're interested in, assuming obviously that you have some data on safety concerns and non-concerns in that category. So you can actually train a smoke term list on Fumeus online. It's free open source software. You can also download it if you prefer not to use it in a hosted fashion and just deploy it internally in your organization. Train a smoke term list and feed that smoke term list into a Raptor, or you can also actually score your data in Fumeus itself. Fumeus does also have scoring functionality. The second question we have is, are misspellings captured as well? The answer is no on that. If you're concerned about misspellings, we recommend that you run your data through a spell checker and spell corrector automatically before you stick it into VT Raptor. Obviously, that has some pros and cons also. Also, we find a lot of the time when we look at online reviews, there's some in foreign languages. Like we've seen reviews in French, in German. I saw one the other day that was written by someone in Myanmar in their local language. We recommend you run those reviews through an automatic translator like Google Translate or any of those similar services before running them through VT Raptor. Don, you had a question about whether weights change based on the product being researched. I think we sort of addressed that question a second ago with Audrey's question about product category specific smoke terms. So yes, the smoke term weights should be in the best guidance should be specific to the product category. And we do recommend that you customize the smoke term weights and the smoke term list to the product category. But the default smoke term list that ships with VT Raptor is a generic smoke term list that needs to be customized to your particular product category of concern. We have a question, can VT Raptor only be used in Excel, or could it also be built into a platform like Power BI to automatically feed in data and generate reports? So that's a great question. So last night, what I did, for instance, with that huge 10 gigabyte data set that I fed in, is I actually used a Power BI query to actually filter out that data set and then pasted the filtered data into VT Raptor. So there was a small manual portion where I filtered the data with Power BI and then copied and pasted it into VT Raptor. We do have ambitions to automate that a bit more and maybe build something which you might imagine as VT Raptor Repeater to repeat the process for large volumes of data. At the moment, though, we've shied away from anything that involves program code because we found the organizations that we work with don't like to deploy custom code, whether it's VBA or Python or anything on their internal networks for security and privacy reasons. So VT Raptor is specifically built so that it only uses Excel formulae. It doesn't use any program code that might give you, pause for concern about what the program is doing with your data. VT Raptor is a Excel non-macro enabled spreadsheet, and you just plonk in your data, and it just uses regular Excel formulae to do the analysis. Ryan had a question about is there a preference to use raw call center data, call center transcript data versus agent AI assistants like Google AI Summary in these tools? Great question. So I would recommend going for the raw data. The AI summaries that I've seen can sometimes transcribe data inaccurately. And then you've got a problem of garbage in, garbage out, like Ken was mentioning. We've also found that we have tried some automated classification with some of the GPTs like ChatGPT, and we found that their classification accuracy is not terrific. And so I probably wouldn't recommend them for labeling your data or transcribing your data. Try to, your best to use the as close to the original customer content as possible. In terms of how much does a license cost, we had an anonymous question about that. So VT Raptor is available to large commercial organizations from Virginia Tech Intellectual Properties. The license cost is $2,500 a once-off fee, so it's not an annual renewal. It's a once-off fee. We do suggest that you get training with your license also, which is an additional cost, because it is hard to use this tool, without any training. VT Raptor is available at no cost to nonprofit organizations and organizations that are working in the public service. So typically, nonprofit organizations, consumer advocacy groups, charities, organizations that are working in the public service are not required to pay the license fee, and VT does have a fee-free program available for VT Raptor for those organizations. So it's just that if you're a commercial organization, there is a once-off nominal licensing fee. Aaron had a question about, are there data limitations as far as the number of items and records for each item? The answer there is yes. I wouldn't push VT Raptor much beyond probably 50 or 100,000 reviews at a time, because it takes 6 minutes per 10,000 reviews to process. And the more reviews you stick in, the larger the spreadsheet balloons to, and then the harder it becomes to work with the spreadsheet. So we do have some guidance in our documentation about how to work with large data sets, turn off automated calculation in Excel, which will slow the process down, and try to restrict your analysis to, we typically recommend a maximum 50,000 records at a time, because you can analyze that in 30 minutes. Out of those 50,000 records, you're probably going to only find a couple of thousand that are high ranking, and then you just retain those shortlisted high ranking safety concern items for future analysis. So yes, there are data limitations, and what we recommend for large organizations is analyze a week at a time. If you're getting 50,000 reviews a week, analyze a week at a time. If you're getting 200,000 reviews a week, get a team of 4 people and give each of them VT Raptor and 50,000 reviews, and they can each analyze in parallel, and they'll each come up with their own shortlist. So VT Raptor is great for a team because each person on the team can analyze a segment of your data set and then do their own shortlist and feed that shortlist back into the central repository. We see large companies in America, like toy manufacturers. They only get 100,000 pieces of customer feedback in a year. So VT Raptor can easily analyze half a year of data in 30 minutes for an organization like that. It's typically the massive online retailers who are getting in Amazon's case, for instance, 70 million pieces of feedback a week that they talk about in Amazon's product safety pledge. They talk about getting 70 million pieces of feedback a week. VT-Raptor is not going to cope with that volume of data unless you do a really super special Power Query and automate VT-Raptor in a very super special way, which requires some specialist skills. So I'd say 50,000 reviews per batch is probably the limitation that you should go for.
Let me interrupt for a second. So we're at the hour. If you give us 2 minutes, we'll get to the remaining questions. There are two at the very end that basically I'll answer. We are going to post everything we can. We're not going to send this all out to all the attendees because we want to make it generally available. So the website for fumes that Alan was talking about, any other references, URLs, we'll post those, and any of this material that Alan cares to post, we will post. So look at the webinar archive for all this information. So Alan, if you can take a couple more questions there, go ahead.
Sure. So for information on how to get the VT-Raptor tool, you can email any of us on the team directly, and we'll connect you with the Virginia Tech intellectual property person. That's Rozzy Finn, Rozzy, R-O-Z-Z-Y, at I think it's vt.edu. It might be VTIP, which is Virginia Tech intellectual
We'll put that link in. You'll put that link
We'll
in.
make it available, but you can reach out to any of us directly, and we'll connect you with Rozzy. In terms of modifying VT-Raptor to incorporate quality metrics, yes, absolutely. And we actually have already done that. There is a tool called VT Griffin, which is actually used for identifying innovation opportunities for consumer products. And in VT Griffin, it actually segments the customer feedback by quality concerns. Like, is this a concern about noise? Is it a concern about size? Is it a concern about processing capacity? Is it a concern about price, etc.? So there is a sister tool to VT-Raptor called VT Griffin, which helps you with quality concerns. VT Griffin, unfortunately, is twice the price because there is a commercial imperative to it, but there's not a product safety imperative to it. So Virginia Tech has priced VT Griffin more aggressively than VT-Raptor because we want VT-Raptor to be more accessible to organizations to be able to rapidly identify their safety concerns. There is also a question about, have any of you addressed the acceptability of such analyses of social media commentary / complaints / posts in a legal setting, for example, in product liability court case? My quick answer to that would be no. David, Nahel, Rich, any comments from you? Or maybe Ken, you'd be the best place to answer that one. If you've seen any court proceedings that have spoken about these automated analyses.
No, I'm sure it's come up in cases, but I can't say that I've seen it. I don't go to trial, so go to trial courts, so I wouldn't necessarily know. But I can certainly say that any good plaintiff's attorney is going to try to have evidence that you knew or should have known of the safety problem and you didn't do anything about it. I worry that the CPSC also was going to take the same position and try to fine you for late reporting if it was somewhere buried in your data and you just never noticed it. Can I ask the last question?
Sure.
Could a company hire any of you guys to help them identify the smoke words that should be included in the training we give to our customer service people, and then would be used in the VT-Raptor?
Sure. So I'll let my team each give a one-word answer to that. David.
One word is yes.
Will help?
Of course, why not?
That's more than one word.
Yes, but talk to the other guys first.
Okay.
And our answer at VT is yes, absolutely. We do offer what we call a technical assistance program, where you can get assistance from us either on a half-day or a full-day rate for as many half-days or full days as you want, and we will help you using tools like VT-Raptor and Fumius, and work as a team with engaging our experts like Dr. Goldberg, Dr. Zaman, and Dr. Gruss to help you develop smoke term lists that are appropriate to your organization and customizations of VT-Raptor that are appropriate to your organization. VT-Raptor is certainly not perfect. You get tons of false positives, as with any tool, and it is intended as something to get you started and help you make rapid progress, rapidly finding safety concerns in online reviews. We can always do better, and we would love to work with you to help make your processes more efficient and to help make our systems more efficient also. So thank you, Ken, to you and the Society of Product Safety Professionals for letting us talk about the tool. And we appreciate being in the session and the opportunity to work with your members.
Well, thank you all for speaking today. This is great information. This is just the start of this development, and it will continue. So we'll try to keep track of it and have you guys back in a year or half a year, whenever it is, and tell us what's going on as things develop. So thank you all for attending today. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Thank you, and Lawden, you can stop the recording. Thanks a lot.